Thank you. Now, my Xenu TV has been up for over 10 years now, exposing Scientology fraud and abuse through streaming video and streaming audio. And I'm very pleased to know that this press conference right now is being streamed live over the web, all over the world, thanks to Anonymous. And we are here today because this is the 2nd anniversary of Project Chinology, which is the operation that Anonymous set forth back in February of 2008 to combat Scientology abuse. And every month since then, Anonymous members have been outside Scientology centers in cities all over the world, every month protesting fraud and abuse. And they've, if you check on YouTube, every day they have new videos that they're putting up. They've created some terrific websites. And they are inoculating the new generation of young people who are really the target for Scientology's recruitment. So for the Scientologists, for the Anonymous people who are here today, and those of you who are watching around the world, I want to thank you for all of your efforts. It's made a big difference. Now, I personally was never a Scientologist, but there are 5 people who are going to be speaking here today. And, well, 6 if we're lucky. And the stories that they have to tell are really pretty amazing and shocking, and in some cases even horrifying. And the abuse, if you could please, that's a good reminder, turn off your cell phones, or at least put them on silent while you're here. The stories that they have to tell are pretty amazing. And I'm certainly glad that they're standing up and speaking out, and more people are doing that every day. And we're so thankful for all of you folks here in the media who are covering this, because the problem is the government isn't doing anything about these abuses, which have been systematic and they've been going on for decades. So the more attention that's drawn to these abuses, the better. And before I introduce the speakers, I think it's important to point out that there are really 3 different types of Scientologists. There's your public paying member. Those are the folks like Tom Cruise or John Travolta, or folks from any walks of life who have the money that they can actually pay for the the increasingly expensive series of courses that make up Scientology's bridge to total freedom. That's what L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, called his very expensive path to salvation. Now, those public members very often are completely in the dark as to the abuses that the staff members and the 3rd type of Scientologists are facing on a daily basis. And we hope through some of these type of media events that maybe they'll take a look and maybe they'll call for action too. The 2nd type of Scientologists are the staff members. Those are the folks who go to work every day in the Scientology centers all over the world. And they lead somewhat of a normal life. They're working long hours and they're being paid peanuts, but they essentially can go home at the end of the day in many cases. But the 3rd type of Scientologists, and this is primarily what we're talking about today, are members of the Sea Org. Now, Scientology loves abbreviations, and instead of calling their centers churches, they're actually called organizations, or orgs for short. So you'll hear people talking about the Boston org or the London org or the LA org. That's what they're talking about. And folks in the Sea Org actually sign a billion-year service contract, and they pledge to return lifetime after lifetime to work for Scientology in exchange for these expensive courses. And these are the folks that really get the brunt of the abuse from corporate Scientology. And I say corporate Scientology because it really is a business. I mean, unlike most other churches where you're making a donation as a plate is passed or you're tithing, in Scientology you're actually paying for a self-help course or a therapy session or one of L. Ron Hubbard's books or tapes or cassettes. And you know, you have to pay for everything. And there are people in Scientology who actually get commissions from selling these products. So in those ways and in other ways, it really is more of a corporation than a religion. And as you're listening to these stories, keep thinking to yourself, well, if a corporation did this, if a regular business did to their employees what Scientology is doing to people in the Sea Org, it would never be allowed to happen. Never. But because they have this cloak of religiosity, Scientology has been able to get away with some really horrendous crimes. And we're hoping that if enough people speak out, that the government will actually do something about it. So let me bring up our first speaker. His story is so amazing that it had to be put in a book. Marc Headley has written a book called Blown for Good, which is really a terrific book that takes you inside the Sea Org to see what life is like on a daily basis, and especially inside the desert compound near Hemet, California, where all the top Scientology executives are. And if you would, please welcome Marc Headley.
Thanks a lot. I started working at the international compound in Gilman Hot Springs, California, called the Gold Base or the Int Base in 1990. I worked there from 1990 until 2005. I basically started working for the Sea Organization when I was 16 years old. I was recruited from a Scientology school that I went to in Los Angeles. And shortly after joining the Sea Organization, I was promoted to the international headquarters. When I was originally recruited, I was promised good pay, vacations, time off on the weekends. And what I actually experienced in the 15 years that I worked there was far from that. The place that I worked at, the organization that I worked for, was called Golden Era Productions. Golden Era Productions produces all the films, videos, lectures, and so on that get sold to all of the Scientology organizations all over the world. Our average day at Golden Era started at about 7:30 and went to midnight each night, and that was our schedule, 7 days a week, pretty much every week of the year. If we were producing well, at some points our meal breaks would be extended from 15 minutes to 30 minutes each day. We'd have like a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 15 minutes. If we were doing really good, we'd maybe get 30 minutes. Also, if we were producing really well, we might get part of Christmas Day off once a year. And if we were doing really well, we would get maybe a 30 or 45-minute meal break on Thanksgiving as a reward, just to give you kind of an idea of the environment there and, you know, how much time we're not working. After I escaped the Sea Organization in 2005 and started my life over, I received a bill from Scientology for over $150,000 for the courses that I did while I was there. For the entire time that I worked for Golden Era Productions as an employee, in 15 years I earned a total of $29,000 an hour, which averages out to under 40 cents an hour for the time that I worked there. We worked over 100-hour work weeks every week. When I got a notice from the Social Security Administration after I left, I actually got an itemized breakdown for each year that I worked there, how much I made. And in one of the years, I think it was the year 2000, I made $1,100 for the entire year of the year 2000. That's how much money I was paid for working 100 hours a week every week of the year.